Welcome back to Jayn Jeffries Entertainment Channel. My name is Brendan, and today, with all the recent hype about the upcoming film Venom, Let There Be Carnage, I think it's only fitting that we do a Venom face painting tutorial. Venom has always been one of my favorite comic book characters, and I've actually done quite a few different Venom face painting designs, and each one turns out a little bit differently, but I think that's the one advantage and interesting thing about this character is that there's so many different ways that you can go about doing it, and yet still be true to the character. So the first thing we're going to be doing is the eye. So I'm starting using opaque white. We're actually using Wolf FX face paint. So again, starting with that opaque white, I'm just starting with the basic outline and sort of map out the overall shape of the eye. Because Venom is an alien, his eyes are, they change shape. There isn't really a specific shape that I'm going for, but rather trying to give it more of that organic flowing shape that fits really well over the face. So I start by, again, doing that outline, filling it in with the brush, and then right around the eye, right in the sensitive areas, just around the eyelid, I actually like to use a sponge and just kind of dab in that color. It seems to fill those sensitive areas in very well. And then I go in and use, I go back to my brush and just fill in kind of those open areas with the white. The next thing I'm doing here is the tongue. So with this specific design, I decided to go with kind of more of a new school cartoony look. And I guess that's kind of my style as an artist, is I like to use kind of like a realistic cartoony look. So what I'm doing here is a big bright pink tongue that's actually going to be kind of hanging out the side of the mouth. So as you can see here, the first thing I'm doing is just kind of blocking in that basic shape. And I think that's one thing that's really good as a beginner, is when you start doing these more complex designs, is you start off by simplifying it and just block in those basic shapes of what you want. And so again, keeping my style in mind with that cartoony realism, new school look with bright colors, over the top features, and just overall colors and designs that really pop and really stand out outside the face. I still want to maintain, of course, that real natural look, and of course, obviously stay true to the character. So right now I'm just mapping out the outline of the mouth. I'm starting with a slightly darker pink, where I've just simply mixed a little bit of purple with my pink and draw out that basic outline of where I want the mouth to flow. So it's going to be kind of coming up over to the side of the eye, down the cheek, and that's going to give me that basic outline of where the mouth is going to be and how the teeth are going to line up. So right here, I'm just jumping back up to the eye. I'm adding a little bit of light blue with a sponge, and I'm not really being too meticulous on where it's going or how dark I'm getting, but I'm simply just adding a little bit of extra color to the eye to make it more alien-like and to give it more of a reflective look. So here I'm jumping back to the tongue now using a slightly darker purple, and I'm just giving myself a basic outline, kind of, again, mapping out the shape of the tongue, the flow of the tongue. I guess I was inspired by the Tasmanian Devil, how, like from the Looney Tunes cartoons, how, he's got this big bright pink tongue that's kind of just like hanging out the side of his mouth, and it kind of just flaps as he moves. That's kind of the look that I was going for. You could kind of picture how, like, a dog, when he's running and he's got his tongue sticking out the side of his mouth and it's kind of just flapping there in the wind. I guess that's kind of like the design I was going for here, is like this like totally over the top cartoony big tongue that's kind of just hanging out the side of the mouth. So here I'm going in with a darker purple now, giving it a little bit more dimension, and you'll see actually how I build up those layers with darker colors. I gradually move to darker colors, again, just pushing those properties to make it more three-dimensional. So I'm now using that same dark purple in the gums, and this is going to give me, again, more of that three-dimensional look. And what I'm actually doing here is using a dry brush technique. So that's where the paint is actually drying on the brush, and I'm kind of just sweeping it over the skin to give me kind of a shading gradient texture, and kind of blending the colors together, again using that dry brush technique. And you'll see me use that in the tongue as well. So I'm just really lightly kind of sweeping that brush over certain areas that give me the effect or the illusion of shadow. I think the dry brush technique, especially when working in really small areas, works very successfully because, again, you're not applying a whole lot of paint, but you're applying just enough with that technique to give yourself a gradient that really pushes that illusion of depth. If you have pieces or parts that are over top of each other, they're overlapping, adding just a little bit of that gradient texture really pushes that three-dimensional effect. I think the dry brush technique, especially when working in really small areas, works very successfully because, again, you're not applying a whole lot of paint, but you're applying just enough with that technique to give yourself a gradient that really pushes that illusion of depth. If you have pieces or parts that are over top of each other, they're overlapping, adding just a little bit of that gradient texture really pushes that three-dimensional effect. I've done here is filled in the open areas, the open gaps of the mouth with a dark red, and I've gone over it with a dark brown, almost black looking color, and again using that dry brush technique. I'm kind of just starting in the darkest areas of the mouth, so right in around the tongue, on the top and bottom of the gums, and just using that dry brush technique, again just sweeping the brush very lightly over top, giving that depth gradient look that just pushes that three-dimensional aspect even more. So the next thing that I'm doing here is jumping to opaque black, and using my black, I'm just outlining everything that I've done so far. All the colors that I've laid down, I obviously want to be careful of not going over top of anything, but I'm going to take my black and outline all the colors, and that is going to provide me with the foundation of the symbiote. Now, the symbiote is of course a living organism, and I want to give the illusion that it's literally crawling along the face as it slowly takes over. So I want to leave some areas of the skin open and paint the symbiote as if it's kind of that liquid substance that's literally crawling and moving over the face. So I'm starting with that basic outline, and that outline is going to give me the foundation to paint more details branching off of it after. So as you can see here, I'm starting to add more details. So I'm using a little bit of a smaller brush, and I'm actually pulling that black paint from the area of the symbiote into the open areas of the skin, and that's going to give the illusion again that that symbiote is trying to take over and cover every square inch of the skin. So I'm trying to again use organic shapes, kind of wispy, and create a variation in size and length just to again make it more natural and organic. The next step you're going to want to do is the teeth. As you can see here, I've already started. I'm using kind of a reverse teardrop, almost cone-like shape for those teeth. And another really neat trick that I like to do just to kind of push that three-dimensional aspect a little further is if you make the teeth gradually get smaller as they go towards the back of the mouth. As I'm starting the teeth on the bottom jaw, I'm just starting with little white dots, and I know I say this a lot, but it's true when I say you're mapping out your design. Stick with simple, basic shapes just to kind of give yourself essentially a blueprint of where and how everything is going to fit together. So I'm just starting with those basic white dots for the spacing of the teeth, and then from there I go and draw it up, and again do those cone-like teardrop shapes, and those teeth in the bottom jaw are going to be the ones that are sticking out, so they're going to be a lot longer, a lot taller, and are really going to give it that mean, menacing look. So now it's time to add some more fine detail. So I'm adding dark purple right around the teeth, right where they meet the gums, as well as adding a little bit of gray shading into the teeth, just to give it a little bit more of that three-dimensional effect. So the last thing I'm going to be doing with these teeth is adding a fine black outline. Now, generally, you have to be really careful when adding black outlines, especially if it's going to be a thick, uniform outline around your entire design. That can make things look a little more flat, a little more two-dimensional and less three-dimensional. Now, of course, this is kind of the play that I'm working with, is this cartoony realism, and because I already have enough details that push that three-dimensional aspect, I can go in and add these this bold black outline that'll just make the teeth stand out a little bit more. Since I already have my black out, I'm just going to go in and do a little bit more fine tuning, some fine detail work with the black. I'm just kind of going around the eye, filling in some small areas, and just touching things up. really going to bring this design to life are the white highlights. So I'm just kind of stippling. I'm using a small detail brush, and I'm just kind of stippling the white. Again, I'm not being too careful in exactly where I'm placing it, or how many dots that I'm adding. I'm not really counting. I'm just trying to create kind of a uniform look around the entire face. That's going to make that symbiote look wet, make it look like it's reflecting light, and that's going to make your design look a lot more dynamic. Now, the last thing I'm going to be doing with this white is adding some highlights into the gums and into the tongue as well. I'm going to be a little bit more methodical in terms of the placement for this white. So here you can see just adding some very basic shapes that go underneath the teeth and kind of striping that white along the tongue, again, just to push that wet three-dimensional look. Now, the absolute last thing I'm going to be doing is adding a black outline around the tongue. It's going to make the entire piece look a lot more uniform, as well as make that tongue pop out a little bit more from the rest of the mouth. Now, the absolute last thing I'm going to be doing is adding a black outline around the tongue. It's going to make the entire piece look a lot more uniform, as well as make that tongue pop out a little bit more from the rest of the mouth. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, as well as feel free to comment below on what tutorial you would like to see us do next. So thank you guys once again, and I hope you guys have a fantastic day.